Okay. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. We are starting our seminar. Sorry for some delays. We hope that Ukrainian ambassador will join us very soon. My name is Andrius Kubilius. I'm a member of European Parliament from Lithuania, from EPP Group, and also I am initiator and coordinator of the network, parliamentary network United for Ukraine, which is doing its activities, first of all, again, European Parliament, also in member states of EU, also in Ukraine, and we are trying to support Ukraine as much as we can, especially trying to do our job in the western side of European continent, trying to convince all the member states to support as much as is needed Ukrainian efforts. I was recently, I spent almost a whole week in Kiev, so with a fresh impressions, I'm back here. And today we have a very special event, one of our webinars. Now it's mixed webinar and live. It's nice to see quite strong participants here in the room. We're doing this seminar together with Ukrainian Prism, with Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies, and the whole seminar is devoted to prospects for European defense industries against the backdrop of the Russian war in Ukraine. So I will not expand too much in that topic. We understand very well. At least my conclusion, I'm not a military guy, so my knowledge about military things are very, limited. But I understand at least from the experience of last year, that the combination of Ukrainian soldiers' motivation and motivation of all the society with Western military supplies have shown that, this combination is stronger than Russian military capabilities. So all the developments in this criminal war waged by Kremlin depends on military supplies to Ukraine, and where we see both some good developments, but also, of course, we see a lot of challenges and problems. First of all, of course, all that hesitation about Leopards is showing that political will is not so easy to consolidate. We have also our Ukrainian ambassador. Ambassador, please join us. So, as I said, political will on the Western side is not so easy to consolidate to have proper decisions. And second point is, of course, that at least what we understand from different reports on European side in member states, military industries and production of military equipment is still not on that level, which is needed, which Ukrainian war demands from EU side. So that is what is the major topic, the major goal of this seminar, to discuss what are the issues, what are the problems, and what can be solutions. We have really a very strong presentation here of different experts, including ministers. I see Urmas Reinsalu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Estonia. Minister, good to see you after elections Sunday. And in any case, we know you as very active member of our network. So whatever will happen in coalition building, we know that we shall have you, as always, very, very active. And I remember very well beginning of our discussions when you, with your experience now being Minister of Foreign Affairs, but previously being Minister of Defense and Minister of Justice, you brought a lot of very important insights into all our discussions, especially about defense issues, defense challenges. Maybe I will stop here and I'm very happy to introduce and to give the floor to Ambassador Vsevolod, who does not need additional introduction.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, and many thanks again to Mr. Kubilius to convening us on another important topic, which is a procurement of ammunition for the Ukrainian needs, but broader also for EU own needs. And definitely many thanks for Ukrainian Prisma. So you just opened the office, you're gearing up, getting active, and it's very important for us. So the point of providing the issue of providing Ukraine with the weapons, including ammunition, it's probably the highest on the highest point of our bilateral agenda with the EU now, for very obvious reasons, because we need not only to defend Ukraine on the south, on the east, on the south, but also to push back when the situation is conducive. And you know very well what is happening now in the areas around Bakhmut and on other directions. So we've been working hard with our partners in the EU and outside the EU to get what is available in the depots in stock now, first thing, and we communicated very clearly our priorities to the member states, to the External Action Service, and the Clearance House. Secondly, there is a need to join forces and to find the most suitable, the most efficient way to procure the ammunition we are lacking now, and the same is relevant to equipment. And the third issue, and this is what is on the EU agenda, is to how to make this process more sustainable in the medium and long term framework. So we are in a very close touch with our colleagues in External Action Service and member states. Now we understand that it will be in the focus of discussion on the level of defense ministers during the informal meeting in Sweden, and hopefully the relevant decisions will be taken up on the highest level during the March EU Council meeting. What is the most important for us, and we understand that could be different approaches, what should be the agency coordinating those common purchases, what should be the procedure, but for us what matters is speed. So this is a crucial moment, crucial issue, and we ask member states and institutions to take into account and to be flexible. So to find definitely what will work, but the mechanism what will work, but which will enable us to get what we need in a very speedy way. The second point I wanted to mention in that context, definitely we understand that member states would like to support their industrial sector. And it's important that industry catch up and answer to the needs, and it needs more investment and more attention. At the same time, we understand that there is ammunition and weapons available in the third countries, cooperating with EU member states. So if in this situation, taking into account Ukraine needs, and it's first of all 155 caliber and other calibers we communicated, and that type of ammunition weapon is available and could be provided by the third countries, I think it's necessary to find a way how to cooperate and how to once again make it possible that Ukraine gets what it needs. But definitely then we are talking about the long-term cooperation. This is completely for the member states to support the industry. But once again, if the goal is now to help Ukraine, we need this flexibility and common sense and to understand what is at stake. Human life, lives of our soldiers, lives of our citizens. Last but not least, when we are talking about the medium and long-term solutions, I think the European defense industry will benefit cooperating with Ukrainian stakeholders, using their experience, using their technical solutions, producing jointly on the territory of the EU, but also, if possible, when possible, producing in Ukraine, taking into account on all security and safety considerations. And we have a lot of things to show and to share, because this is a war, and the war, it's during the war, one can prove what is working, what is not working. So Ukraine, and I think today we have Ukrainian stakeholders to contribute and explain what we can do together. So I think we need to seize this opportunity and to reinforce each other. So I will stop here, and thank you once again for inviting, and I wish all of us fruitful and interesting discussion today.
Okay, and now I'm really asking to take the floor and to do all the job of moderating this very important meeting. Frederick Weslow, who now represents Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies and was deputy head of mission for the European Union's advisory mission in Ukraine, which was responsible for civilian security in Ukraine. So, and Frederick, pleasure that you agreed to do all the job to moderate our meeting.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is all on my side, I have to say. I think the first two introductory speakers did an excellent job in framing this discussion. I think the urgency here is one which we've been living with for over a year now, but it continues. And looking at the situation on the ground, especially around Bakhmut, this urgency is probably stronger than ever today. Obviously, Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine a year ago was a watershed moment for Europe and European security. It has shattered any illusions that one might have harbored about Russia, but it's also broken many taboos for the European Union. And in a very short period of time, the EU has become something of a serious security and defense provider, and is actively supporting a neighboring country with arms, ammunition, and training. We've seen the deployment of EU MAM, the military training mission, which aspires to train 30,000 Ukrainian troops. We've also seen EPF, the European Peace Facility, where around 3.6 billion euros have been spent on arms and ammunition. And this EPF, I think it's important to note that this is not only about the money, but it's also about the EPF having a multiplier effect and helping member states bilaterally support Ukraine with military assistance. And to date, according to the Kiel Institute, the EU and member states have provided 14.3 billion euros worth of military assistance, which is quite something. And now, of course, as was mentioned by the introductory speakers, the main urgent priority is ammunition, 155 millimeter shells in particular. This will be discussed tomorrow by defense ministers. And there is a real urgency in resupplying, replenishing stocks, but also, of course, providing Ukraine with the ammunition they need. But also looking ahead, and I hope this roundtable today will touch on these issues. I mean, you know, we have this urgent need to deal with the situation here and now, but we also need to take a medium and long-term perspective because the threat is not going to disappear. So the question really is, how can European defense industries reshape and refocus and restructure perhaps in order to meet this demand? And as also was mentioned at the beginning, the Ukrainian demand is higher than what the EU and member states can supply at the moment. But how do we make sure that, you know, demand and supply can match? But without further ado, I want to hand over to the first expert speaker. But let me just say that this is also being broadcast online and is being recorded. So everything you say will be held against you for all eternity. But without further ado, let me hand over to Gennady Maksak, who is the executive director of Ukrainian Prism and is also one of SEV's partners here with this event, together with United for Ukraine. Gennady, over to you, please.
Frederick, thank you so much for this possibility, Your Excellencies, dear friends, colleagues. I think it is a timely event here. As Frederick already mentioned, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow there will be the informal defense ministers meeting in Stockholm. And the issues, urgent issues about procurements, about deliveries of ammunition would be on the agenda. And it is very important for us maybe to produce some ideas which could be also interesting and beneficial for our colleagues from diplomacy and from ministries of defense, how to deal with that. But let me start from this very symbolic point of view, not only about this informal meeting, but basically it's 1 year since the Versailles Informal Council. And we know that it was the first time when European Commission was tasked to see the gaps in investments in defense industries. And I think that process is still ongoing. There is document which is like portraying what's going on with defense industries, but there are still no clear-cut answers to this question. And then a big issue when it comes to the not only buttressing up the defense potential and combat power of European Union member states, but it also a big issue for partners, which might be also not only contributors, not only consumers, but contributors to this situation. So with this, I would like to also mention that 1 year is a time of lessons. A lot of lessons are done and learned from this situation, and we have quite a few reports, and some of them are brilliant when it comes to assessing what's going on battlefields. But what is really important, that Ukraine is resilient at the moment. It is very important to understand that society and army are ready. They have high morale to do with the aggressor and to fight tooth and nail till the squeezing out of this enemy from our soil. Another issue about military leadership and political leadership, I think it's also very important to admit that we have mature leadership which is capable of bringing Ukraine to victory, both militarily and in political terms. Third one, army is creative, is innovative, and basically this is something which gives us an edge on the battlefield. And let's keep our fingers crossed to continue of this situation. I know this is very important for us when we stand to this enemy as Russia is. And we forge a big coalition which helps a lot in terms of money, in terms of armament and other many layers of our wartime diplomacy. But let's also skip to negative lessons we have. Ukraine is on life support, economic support from our partners. And let's not forget about it for one moment, because basically each month we need a big sum of money just to keep our budget and our system afloat. This is something we could also be vigilant of that. Another issue, we have, our army is innovative, but it is outnumbered by Russian army. and outnumbered by material of Russian army. So in that way, we still have to deal with this complexity and trying to address this with the answers from our partnership with European Union and NATO member states. And about European Union, which is also very important, as our partner, European Union is incapable, or European Union member states incapable on their own to keep defense on the continent. And United States is still indispensable part of this security architecture. So this is one lesson. Another lesson that I would say that European Union member states just miss some opportunities about fostering defense initiatives, and now we're trying to start this process from low zero, which is not that easy, and we have some reluctancy in political terms, we have reluctancy in terms of technical preparedness to the situation of development cooperation. So I think it's something which is on the side of our partners. But now, three ideas which are very important, and they were clearly mentioned by Mr. Kuleba when it comes to our military support from European Union. The first one, urgent deliveries of that ammunition and that arms which is in stockpiles of European Union member states. I think it's important to understand that it's just a matter of life of Ukrainian soldiers, and it's a matter of days and weeks, not months and years to come. So I think it's very important to find compromise and find understanding from our colleagues, maybe tomorrow on this meeting, that it is very, very urgent issue for us to deal with. Another point, to extension of the European Peace Facility. You mentioned this, I would say is quite a success story for European Union to have this instrument, but to understand the complexities and limits of this financial umbrella, I would say, because it is not only for Ukraine. There are other countries on the horizon which need some support, and basically there is also need to extend financially this instrument. So these concerns also we see on our radar, and it depends on political will from our partners how to deal with it. And third one, as already mentioned, it is about how to foster synergies and cooperations with our partners in defense industries. I think that it will be also maybe part of the intervention of our colleagues from Ukromonprom, but I think there is interest on both sides to foster this cooperation, and there is urgent need to make it possible. I know that there are some defense clusters created and signed in the Czech Republic with other partners, but I think that we still try to expand this possibility. Short-term horizon, I would say it was already mentioned, we should somehow adjust current instruments for common procurement and for deliveries of ammunition, be it on the level of these instruments which were created last year, for example, this joint task force for procurement. There are some instruments, and I think that you know about that, about ammunition, and maybe it would be possible somehow to make this procurement also for the partner, not only member states. Another issue of short-term perspective, how to make use of this new instrument, newly created instrument like EDIPRA, which is still in process of consultation, but I would say that even this possibility should be utilized in Ukraine, because this is the horizon for 2 years, 23 to 24. So I think it is something we should look for. For midterm perspective, I would say we still have to look at the possibility to be equal partners when it comes to the initiatives of European Defence Fund, and maybe to try to find political consensus for the new instrument, which is EDIP, a European Defence Investment Program. Both have a big basket of resources for procurement, for research, for defense industry projects. I think that at this moment it is only the perspective or lenses of how to see the situation. Is we capable to be associated partner as Norway, for example, when it comes to the situation, or are we considered somehow in different way, in which is also we should discuss. At this moment, my perception, we are clearly defending also European Union security at our battlefield. Long term, it might be in Twitter style, not to take time from my colleagues on the panel, I think we should also try to reconsider PESCO. in some parts it is a failure. Let us be blunt about it. But in some parts, I think this possibility for us to understand how it works in some regional groupings, because it's not only about all 25 or 26 who I think are part in PESCO program as a framework, but with some groupings in some systematical issues which might be of importance. Ukraine showed its interest before that in 2020, 2021, but there was like a political barrier, ceiling, I would say, for us to be part of this project. I think PESCO should be reconsidered, should be audited, and after that to try to understand which projects are capable of being afloat and to produce, to deliver, and which we should already forget. I mentioned about EDIBRA and create synergies. I would say if we think about long term, in Ukraine we got used to name our sectoral cooperation as visa-free regimes. For example, last year our Prime Minister said that we have 4 or 5 visa-free regimes in transport, in customs, in energy. So I think it's time for us to think about this defense visa-free regime when it comes to full-fledged membership in these positions as a candidate state, as a state which provides I would say secret umbrella for this moment even to NATO states and EU member states. I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Gennady. I think this gives a very good overview as well of many of the instruments actually at the EU's disposal. I want to now turn to the Estonian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Urmas Reinsalu, who in a previous capacity was also Minister of Defense. So I think is absolutely ideal as a speaker on our panel, especially given that Estonia has been so forthcoming in terms of supporting Ukraine on the side of military assistance, and now also most recently with this new initiative on ammunition. So I would ask you, Minister, if you could speak perhaps a little bit to this notion of the synergies, what more the EU can do, and in particular explain a little bit the proposal on joint purchasing of ammunition. Thank you.
Thank you, and hello to everybody. The one thing what is now the most the quicker issue is now how to get ammunition from the current stockpiles to Ukraine. EIS has made a proposal also in that matter to increase the reimbursement rate on if the countries are sending from their stockpiles up to the 90%, and this is going to be discussed tomorrow as it was referred in an informal defense ministers meeting. Now the situation, maybe I would estimate so, is that looking the amount of pledges what member states have done about the 155 caliber ammunition, how much has in fact reached to Ukraine, I would say it's 1/2. So 1/2. Countries have said they will deliver. Well, surely we all hope it will be, the word will be kept, but it is still only 1/2. And it needs to be corrected immediately, I think. There arises another problem. What about the qualifications of 155? Actually, it came as a surprise to me that in NATO standard, in Cold War time, there was a clear discipline that all the adapting systems of ammunition to howitzers to cannons should be the same. Now, because times have turned more peaceful during last generation, the companies and also the member states who had to follow these regulations have basically lost the clear-cut control. So basically, there are more than 10 different specifications of 155 ammunition. Companies have tried to do it as the mobile phone companies are doing their own adapters, so to interlink the customers. But this is surely another issue also around this joint possible procurement, that we need also to have polyfunctional ammunition. Putting the current need, why this ammunition is so critical, is that the figures show that Russia uses per day as much ammunition, shells, what European countries are as a combined effort currently produce in a month. So day to month. Ukraine uses in a day around 10 times less. These are estimations. And Estonian proposal truly is that using the current peace facility scheme, we would make a joint procurement in a manner which is the most time efficient. And now, if I look in the officials level responses to Estonian proposal, basically there is not anybody vetoing it, but the devil is now what is going to be discussed in defense ministers level in details. What is the speediest way to deliver? And we would like to avoid as much as possible a new initiative starting from 0 point. We have suggested clearly that just countries will put by a quota what is currently existing additional money to peace facility, and using the current procurement agreements, what you already the procurement agents of the nation states have, using these agreements just to rise the volume of procurements. So we see that this is actually the most time efficient. Now the Commission has proposed that European Defence Agency should be launch a procurement. And we are cautious in that initiative, and so this detailization of this project is going to be under discussion. Hopefully, we will reach somewhere. Then the foreign ministers will have debate on 20th of March on that, and hopefully end of March. Then the Council will make a final political intent decision on that matter. But this issue of procedure is not anything technical or just a nuance issue, because actually we mentioned that under the flagship of Defense Agency, some joint procurement initiative has already put to the table. It was launched, in September, and it's planned to reach somewhere around May this year. So you see, actually, the time is rather unacceptably long by using that mechanism. So what is now urgently needed is, first, that countries and pledge to all member states who have promised to give shells to Ukraine deliver immediately. Secondly, on this joint procurement project, please design it so that it is a most time efficient one. We, as Ukrainian friends, have stated their needs, that for the season need, and of course these are all estimational figures, I can imagine, the need would be 1 million shells. We have estimated it, and it is very rough, based on last autumn prices, that it would cost around additionally 4 billion euros. And this is one project, and I think if we would be managed to deliver it in coming weeks, it will, from my understanding, create also a precedent to a new the similar projects. It might be the case, and surely why is that now to do it in as a joint effort? First, we need to motivate the member states to deliver, and there have been discussions whether the third countries, companies, could also be partners in that matter. Well, I think if the European countries producers will not be capable to deliver, I think as a second option it could be also allowed. But of course, from the political context, Estonia, a small country, we don't have such shell producers, but to motivate also the bigger military industry, either owners or on the soil existing the countries of EU, to motivate them, I think it's a first signal should be that these are procurements around European continent providers done. And secondly, what is important now, there is a market, at least companies are signaling it, that there is a market problem to companies to enlarge, to make investments to enlarge production, because they are aware of the future estimations of needs. At least they say so. So some estimations are that if this joint procurement will be implemented, during the fall of this year, European defense companies could be capable, as a combined effort, to rise their production volume of their production of shells up to the 7 times. So this is some kind of estimation. So it, as always, there is issue of political will now. In a more euphemistical way, we feel that there is a consensus, and now it is how. And the second issue is now how to implement it in a most time critical manner. And as a second element, as I stated, there is a critical need also to fulfill the promises. But Ukrainian friends have already somehow calculating that it will, in the nearest future, could be used. And also, as I mentioned, there is a more like scholastical but very practical issue, is that this 155 doesn't mean that in real life all the 155 shells could be used in all 155 cannons. There are, as I understood, there are vast limitations and combinations in that context. And of course, this needs to be also urgently solved in this joint procurement effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think that was extremely clear. You really stressed the time-critical urgency here, that we need a system, an implementation system, which really is able to deliver to our Ukrainian partners as soon as possible. I now want to hand over to Nico Lange, who is a senior fellow of the Zeitenwende initiative of the Munich Security Conference. He's also worked as chief of staff in the German Federal Ministry of Defense and has had a number of other positions as well. So, Nico, maybe you could give us a little bit the perspective from Berlin and what we can expect from Germany when it comes to defense industry, and in particular this initiative of joint purchase of ammunition.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. I'm not really sure if I am able or even want to speak for Germany in this discussion. But I think what is clear is the longer the war goes on, the more important the industrial players are. And that includes Germany, but that also includes France, Spain, and Italy. And I would advocate very much for including all the industrial player into the equation going forward. And the initiative on 155 millimeter artillery ammunition is, I think, an extremely important one, not only because the ammunition is very much needed and will be needed for some time to go, but also because expanding the useful role of the European Peace Facility, I think it finds a role for the European European Union in all of this, while we know that defense procurement is still a very national matter. And on the ammunition initiative, much has been said. I think what is extremely important now is to make clear to Putin that he cannot outproduce us. The Estonian minister clarified the calculations, and I think we have to make clear we will produce more and we will deliver more to Ukraine. This is also communicatively, I think, very important now. But before I say something about Germany, there are other needs of Ukraine that should not be neglected, where the European Peace Facility and European defense industries could play an important role. And if we talk about short-term needs, then we talk not only about artillery ammunition, we talk about mortars now and mortar ammunition. There is a huge lack of mortars. That is also because the Russian warfare has changed, especially in the area around Bakhmut that the ambassador mentioned, but also in other areas. And I mean, mortars should not be difficult to find in huge amounts, but it has to be done also in a time-sensitive manner. And one more issue is the use of drones. I think that is something that we all have to learn from in the future. Drones are everywhere in this war, and not only elaborate drone systems, but also consumable, cheap drones that are used for many purposes, especially drones with night vision capabilities. I mean, if the European Union has the instruments like the European Peace Facility, why not buying all civil drones that are available on the market in the world and provide them to Ukraine? I mean, that would also have the advantage that Russia would not be able to buy them. And we all know the producers of the commercial drones are mainly Chinese at the moment. The European Union has a possibility to scale and go into this big, and I think a big move on commercial drones could be very helpful. One often neglected aspect is the aspect of logistics support, but also maintenance for the weapon systems that have been delivered to Ukraine. I think this is not working good enough. This is tried in the Baltic countries, in Eastern Poland, in the Slovak Republic, but it's by far not good enough. It's far away from the front lines, but it will become a decisive factor over time. So the companies have special needs in setting up facilities on the borders of the European Union. Maybe there are ways to move this further to the front lines, but I think there is an enormous logistics and maintenance task where the European Union institutions could be helpful. And on the short-term needs, maybe one last point, and then that leads also to medium and long-term needs. There is a lack of instruments for communication in many parts of the Ukrainian armed forces at the moment, especially secure communication. This should not be too difficult for a player like the European Union to procure this, but leading over to the long term, I said the commercial drones are produced by China mainly. The more elaborate drone systems are produced by Turkey, both countries not members of the European Union. And if we talk about communications, especially secure digital communications, they are produced by companies in Israel or by companies that used to be US, but are now subsidies of Chinese companies. So there's, I think, a strategic technological element there for the European Union to use procurement by the European Defense Agency to make European defense industries being able to provide technologies that are at the moment only provided by players outside of the European Union. I think that is a very important question going forward to the long term. And I mean, cooperation with Ukraine could play a very important aspect there for European defense industries. I just, it will not be a long advertising, but I'm an author of a study that investigates how Ukrainians are fighting the war against Russia. And there's a lot to learn, but I think one element that is to learn there is that the Ukrainians are extremely good in combining high-tech and low-tech. and using artificial intelligence, artificial neural networks, and battlefield digitalization to make sense of the situation and make the knowledge not only for usable for intelligence, but make it operational for targeting. And if you see the technologies used again, it is a commercial low orbit satellite constellation that Ukraine is very much dependent on, which is good that Ukraine can use Starlink. But where is the European low orbit satellite constellation that we all could use in the future for that? And if we talk about battlefield digitalization and use of artificial intelligence for data fusion and sensor fusion and making sense of all the military data, I think lessons learned from Ukraine, technologies that are invented of Ukraine could improve the systems we have in European Union countries for this very much. So that's, I think, an obvious area for cooperation. Maybe one sentence about Germany. Germany is doing the right thing, but it's doing it in a hesitant way, too slow. But let's not focus on symbolic discussions too much. I mean, I'm advocating all of the time, pressuring the German government to move faster on infantry fighting vehicles, on main battle tanks, on other things. And it's a pity that chances have been missed for further counterattacks this fall. And it's now much more difficult to have Ukrainian counterattacks than it was a few months ago because of this hesitancy. On the other hand, there are a lot of elements where German industrial players could play a very decisive role in the future, and where they showed to be very pragmatic and fast, not only when it comes to, I think, the current issue of artillery ammunition production, but also when it comes to equipping Ukraine in the future to make Ukraine being able to defend itself in the period after this war. And maybe there is a constructive approach by tackling Germany more from the industry side than from the political side. I think that could be an angle that the European Union has instruments for to develop some more constructive pressure. Germany needs help politically, that's obvious, and the pressure needs to be kept up. But I think involving the German industry into the elaborations that are here, I think would be very useful. And this might include possibilities. I read with interest that the German Chancellor mentioned 2 times that Germany is ready to be able to be part of a conversation of security guarantees for Ukraine in the future. I think this would very much mean equipping Ukraine with what is needed, and this could mean German industry working together with Ukrainian defense industry, developing systems together or modifying systems together, increasing production capabilities by production capabilities that are renewed or built in Ukraine. And I think that also strategically this could be a very interesting way going forward in a phase where I think we have to do the short-term discussions about immediate supplies to Ukraine and the long-term security guarantee discussion for Ukraine. We have to do this. We have to do this in parallel now, and have to do both in the same. Have to do same in the same discussion. And my last point, I think what is really embarrassing for us all, this includes all European Union member states that are members of NATO, and it has been mentioned by the Estonian minister and by others already, is the low level of interoperability. I think this is unacceptable. I mean, if we have a tank that has the same name, but in effect are 25 different versions of the same tank, if we have to reprogram software to use certain ammunition types on equipment that should be interoperable with each other, that is something where NATO, I think, needs to exercise influence within NATO to make the platforms more compatible and interoperable with each other. But also going forward with production capabilities, I think we have to do much better than that. This is really embarrassing. And the last point, if you see the war in Ukraine, very much is focused on mobility and precision. And providing precision has much to do with data analysis and data-driven battle that I already mentioned. When it comes to mobility, it comes about bridge laying capabilities, about bridges, roads, possibilities to move equipment fast. And I think military mobility has been taken up by the European Union institutions some time ago in the last budget discussion. Then somehow the budget was not as big as it should be on this, but I think it's a good chance now having this discussion coming back also to the military mobility needs. I think that would be an excellent role for the European Union to be complementary to NATO, and it would increase security for Ukraine going forward, but also for us all in Europe.
Thank you very much. So the famous NATO standards are actually multiple standards. It is proven, but I think the Ukrainian armed forces have become experts at using all different types of NATO standards that are there. We have half an hour left. I want to make sure that we have enough time for questions and answers as well. But without further ado, I want to hand over now to Yuri Gusiev, who's the CEO of Ukrboromprom, and he's also former Deputy Minister of Defense as well. So over to you.
Me.
We can't
Hello,
hear you.
everybody. Distinguished
yes,
audience.
Now we hear you.
Yeah?
Okay.
Do we? Yeah. Distinguished audience, it's a pleasure to talk to you, to discuss defense industry cooperation. Actually, I want to start with my appreciation from me personally and my team of state defense industry for support from European Union, which we have from the early beginning of this full invasion of Russia last year. From the first day of this full invasion, we started to work 24/7 in our state defense enterprises. In defense industry, we increased the level of production of ammunition, armored vehicles, precision weapons. But as dear Minister and other colleagues mentioned, it's not enough. It's not enough for our victory. And now we have an urgent need for ammunition. We have domestic production of ammunition, but it could cover only small part of our needs. That's why we have strong cooperation with some EU countries. As Mr. Kubilius mentioned and the other colleagues mentioned, we have cooperation with Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, other countries. But I think we should to establish a coordinational mechanism for defense industry development, which will include our potential, which will include our urgent needs, and which will include future needs for the security in the region. At the same time, we have, as I've already mentioned, urgent needs for ammunition. We have urgent need for ammunition which is a Soviet type of ammunition, like 152, 122. At the same time, we already have Western weapon, and we need to organize repayment and maintenance for Western weapon here, and we have some negotiations with defense companies from Germany, from France, other countries, to establish maintenance and repayment hub here in Ukraine next to front line, because in this war time is very important, because it's terrible to imagine that if you have some damages in the front line, you need to move some cannon from front line to Germany, for example, for repayment, and then back to Ukraine, to eastern part of Ukraine, for example. That's why for us it's very important to be a part of this defense industry supply chain and production chain, and to understand that there is some coordinational mechanism which are working for urgent needs, which understand current situation and current needs, and which will be very efficient in the future. Also, we have very critical point about component supply, because we already, as I already mentioned, we already have some Western weapon in our army, and we need to organize component supply for that weapon as a part of this repayment and maintenance. We also understand that we should increase the number of production, not only ammunition, but also armored vehicles, also other weapons. That's why we understand that joint mechanism, coordination mechanism, will help us to understand industrial potential from different countries, and we want to be a part of this mechanism, and we hope that mechanism will help us to organize repayment and maintenance, component supply, and for the future we will be a strong partner for EU defense industry companies and NATO defense industry as a strong partner. At the same time, we understand, and colleagues already mentioned about technology, about high tech in this war, and we understand that we want to move to high tech type of weapons, and who will use more technological weapon will have more privileges and more advantages in the battlefield. That's why we also have some negotiations about R&D for the future of weapons. And last but not least, we understand that there is a lack of capacity and production of ammunition. At the same time, there is some capacity of equipment in different EU member states and different regions of Europe, which we could engage in joint industrial chain to produce more ammunition. Or we already have some gifts from different EU countries with the equipment for our enterprises, and that's helped us to improve numbers of production. I hope that mechanism of coordination in defense industry will help us to produce more urgently, and will help us to have joint strategy for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very clear. Now I want to pass the floor to our final speaker before opening up for questions and comments. So Katarina Andrius is from the representation of Poland and is head of CSDP at the Polish representation. Katarina, maybe you could explore a little bit what more the EU can do within the framework of CSDP.
Thank you, Frederick, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for invitation to this event. I'm happy to talk about what the EU should do further, but first let me start by saying that in our view, I mean, this war will have a profound and long-term impact on the defense policy of the EU, and so far we have been, focusing on reacting, but I do hope that we can also be much more bold in strategic thinking of how we should now enhance, foster European defense policy, taking under consideration that the common threat that we face will stay with us for the foreseeable future. So in this context, 3 issues I would like to raise today. First, just very briefly on how Poland is responding to the changes in our security environment and trying to adapt itself. As you know, we have increased GDP spending on defense. It's 2.6 GDP% last year and 4% of GDP to be spent on security and defense this year. And those are the estimates, and then in relative terms, I think we will be at the forefront in NATO countries. We also increase our industrial capacity. I don't want to go into too much details here, but of course this is our own national production, but also cooperation with partners in Europe, but also with like-minded partners around the world, which I think is very important, and I will come back to that later on. For us nationally, this is of course US and South Korea recently. Then support to Ukraine. We have been trying to do as much as possible, I think, on all areas, military, humanitarian, political. In military terms, I think for us nationally, it has been over 2.5 billion euros worth support that we have happily passed to Ukraine to fight the Russian aggression. I'm saying all this as a couple of examples to show that this is for us an existential issue and hence our policy choices. But now moving on to the EU agenda. We have been always advocating practical and pragmatic development of European defense, which for us meant first and foremost complementarity with NATO. Majority of EU member states are also allies within NATO, and as we have seen now, this coordination between 2 institutions is crucial. What we believe should happen now, and this is what we are advocating here in Brussels within the Council and within other institutions, is that EU defense policies should concentrate on developing those capabilities that will help us all in collective defense, deterrence, and also strengthening of the eastern flank. I mean, we all see where the threat comes from, and this is what we would like to see being reflected. But it also means more money for military mobility. Nico Lange mentioned military mobility. Just last week, we had a discussion in the Council on the strategic compass, and there we heard that yes, military mobility, it's very important, but for the time being, there's not enough money. There's lack of money there. So you see, big ideas, but then we would also like to see it really being developed. UK joined recently. We hope that other partners can also join this project, as this is something very tangible and in times indeed of war, very, very practical and important. Changes in EU defense policy for us also mean using the existing CSDP instruments to the situation. And here I would say that our opinion is that some of the instruments adapted rather quickly and efficiently, starting with the European Peace Facility. Just to remind all of us that in the pre-war times, I think it was 50 million euros that was envisaged as help to Ukraine. Now we have over 3.5 billion euros, and we have added, by the decision of the Council just last week, additional 2 billion euros for the EPF. But as was rightly pointed out, this instrument is global in nature. It's supposed to help all the partners. So thinking about needs of others, we believe that additional top-ups will be necessary as well. Part of our discussion today is about ammunition as the most, let's say, urgent topic on the agenda, especially of tomorrow's defense ministers meeting. Well, so to touch upon on this, we believe that an extra injection of money for this initiative would be most practical way to quickly move forward. And this is because the way the European Peace Facility instrument is constructed now is that it has this yearly ceilings. So basically the money that we have now under the instrument will be very hard to be used very quickly. And here we need to act quickly and urgently. So a new injection of money that could be immediately directed to ammunition would be a good solution in our view. Mr. Ambassador mentioned also openness to other countries, to other partners from outside the European Union. Well, this is also our view. Of course, we need to first look what we have here and what we can quickly first donate and then procure. But if this is not feeling the needs, we believe that openness to like-minded partner is very important. I mean, this is a global issue. This is not just about us, but about being effective. So that was a comment on the ammunition, and then we have the EU MAM, of course, and then again I would raise this as an example of possibility of the EU to act quickly when there is political will. There was an idea in late August to have this mission, then in October first decision, and in November launching of the decision to train. Frederick, you mentioned there's a new goal of 30,000 soldiers. Indeed, part of the trainings are done in Poland. We focus on collective trainings, but also some other specialist trainings, and we believe that this is just a first step in this also medium to long-term cooperation. So, moving quickly to what are, let's say, some challenges ahead of us. And in one sentence, I would just say that this is moving from, this current ad hoc measures to something more substantive and to something that can happen between the end of the war and actually the time when Ukraine will join the EU. So what to do in between with some instruments that are not necessarily, let's say, open to third countries? Well, the way we would like to see it is definitely further using European Peace Facility as the, let's say, core financial instrument to support Ukraine in reconstruction, in modernizing armed forces, but also including Ukrainian entities in the process. So this element of partnership that we talked about. So not just giving, but also kind of being in a dialogue and using the experience. I mean, there are ways to do it. Ukraine could be an implementing actor for some assistance measures, and this could be something very concrete in our view to bring Ukraine closer, let's say, to the institutions, to the processes. Then EU MAM mission hopefully could be one day physically moved to Ukraine actually, and could be redefined to further enhance defense cooperation. So we hope that EU MAM, the mission is there to stay for longer, not only to train soldiers that need to go to the combat now. Then cooperation with EDA. Well, from what we analyzed, for the time being, it's rather limited, the agreement that is there, and there's definitely room to enhance defense cooperation between Ukraine and EU within EDA framework. And here we will think about using all this experience of innovation and of this innovative ways to combat in common projects, hopefully. EDIRPA is another instrument that should be, in our view, concluded swiftly, but also wisely. And now it's more in the hands of the parliament than in the council. But one point here, Poland was the country advocating for actually open character of EDIRPA and including Ukraine in it. There was no consensus on that in the council, but as still ball is in the game, maybe this could be still taking under consideration. So a couple of points what can be done, and I would leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Katarina. So we have around 10 minutes left. I'm going to ask questions and then go back to the panel and our introductory speakers as well for final remarks. We also have the possibility of anybody online writing questions in the comments section, but I open it up. If you could please introduce yourself as well. Yes, please.
Hello, Anastasia Shapachkina, Eastern Circles. It's a French think tank working on energy and defense. And I have a question for Nico Lange. How do you see German-French defense cooperation within the framework of the war in Ukraine and helping Ukraine going forward, considering the history of this cooperation being quite challenging? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll collect a few questions before we answer them. Anybody else in the room? This is a chance. I knew it. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Roland Freudenstein from GlobSec, which is a Central European think tank. It also a question to Nico Lange. I mean, if I understood you correctly, you advocated that the EU directly gets in touch with German industry, thereby bypassing the slow and cumbersome German defense bureaucracy and the government. But that could backfire, couldn't it? Because I mean, if we talk about export licenses that are still given by the government, that I think that's an essential part, and that should be emphasized in this context.
Thank you, Roland. I will now turn to participants online. We have Ostap Jednak, advisor to the CEO of Ukroboronprom. Ostap, you have a question?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me? I have a question actually from the previous speaker. There were very good remarks about cooperation with European Defense Agency, but we also wonder, as to Ukroboronprom, as our CEO said, we are trying to integrate ourselves to the European defense industry, but unfortunately we have institutional obstacles that we cannot participate in the innovations in European Defense Fund possibilities and others. And my question is how we can remove these obstacles, because right now it's a very good timing for us to integrate into European defense production chains, and we have bottlenecks. We can increase our production capacities, but we have bottlenecks on some components, on energetic materials and others. And since we are not in all the studies of production chains which European Union is doing, we would also urge you to include Ukrainian defense industry into capabilities analysis and supply chains analysis of also ammunition and weapons EU and NATO are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we also have Sergei Markovsky, also advisor to the CEO of Ukroboronprom.
Dear colleagues, I wanted to say that actually we are quite open to this ways how to cooperate, and I really appreciate that initiative that we can be involved into this cooperation. So we can do it both in Ukraine and outside, and even if even if like European companies can choose other partners, we can provide premises and production sites and advice to facilitate this cooperation. So I would most probably echo the question or request of staff, but to make it broader and to leave it to energetic materials, but to include this supply chain study for all kinds of equipment, especially spare parts, because actually what we see is that maintenance now is really a key issue in parallel with munitions, because taking covers 1,000 kilometers to repair and also to having such travel for spare parts is, to our understanding, is luxury, and our militaries want care for the repair in like in half a day, not a couple of weeks or months. So it's our request, and we are ready to assist in any way possible.
Thank you very much. So if there are no further questions, I'll go back to the panelists to address some of these questions and also make final remarks. But I think, Nico, I'll start with you, given that two of the questions were clearly directed towards you.
Well, very frank answer. German-French cooperation when it comes to military assistance for Ukraine is underwhelming, isn't it? As is the French contribution in general. And as I said, going forward, the industrial nations have to play a more important role. This includes Germany, of course, but this will include France, Italy, and Spain and others as well. But to be honest, I also don't know what there could be as a German-French initiative to help Ukraine at this point, because many of the things that we were talking about today are not really produced in a German-French manner. When it comes to industry, Roland, I think the blockade was there. It was real. And it was an achievement by Ukraine because Ukraine directly talked, for example, to deal that IRIS-T was delivered as an air defense system by Germany to Ukraine. So it showed that if Ukraine talks directly to German industry, it can increase the pressure. But the blockade is now lifted when it comes to infantry fighting vehicles, main battle tanks, bridge-laying tanks, and other equipment. And we have seen this led to also Leopard 1 tanks, other things that were still in storage with the German industry now made available. It's a shame that it had not been made 10 months ago, but at least this process is now going. That's why I think it's worthwhile talking to the German industry more about further possibilities. And with ammunition, it's clear anyway. I mean, there is no restriction anymore.
Thank you. I will now turn to the Estonian foreign minister. Maybe you could address this question of bottlenecks that came from our Ukrainian partners. How can we resolve some of these blockages that prevent cooperation?
I think that giving a political mandate to solve that, there is, in all cases, in these tectonical times, we have seen that if there is a practical need, then it needs to have an extraordinary solution in that context. And I think this may be the list of issues what have arisen now in this roundtable. I would like very much indeed your leadership, Andrius, maybe to arrange a European Parliament appeal to the Commission to address that, as we are speaking about this ammunition procurement, to the smooth the bottlenecks solving and so on. I think this practical call to member states, but also to Commission to act, this is maybe a practical deliverable for today's roundtable.
Thank you very much. So Yuri Gusiev has had to leave the meeting. I will now turn to Katarina, if there's anything from your side, concluding remarks, if you want to address some of these questions.
Yes, thank you, Frederick. Maybe just one issue that I didn't mention before: maintenance and repair. I think it's key, and I think that there is a room to improve EU policies on this front. One of the places where we would see this happening is through European Peace Facility. So also talking about concrete, let's say, technical deliverables, there would be room to have EU money finance maintenance and repair of all the equipment that Ukraine is using on the battlefield. There are different categories. You know, for now, EU money can only finance, let's say, European equipment maintenance and repair. But the way we would see it, for example, is extending this category to equipment that was gained on the battlefield from the adversary. For example, this also needs to be maintained and repaired. And I think that we could help with this, with the European money. So this would be my last point. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed, logistics and maintenance, important issue not to be forgotten. Gennady, final remarks.
Well, from interventions of our speakers, I see that we have a lot of synergies, potential synergies, and I'm glad that all these ideas which we share about like extending mandate of functional coverage of European Peace Facility, of EDA, EDIPRA, I think this is something we have to continue on this track. And I would say that it is a good start. Within our project, with our partners, would like maybe to continue this initiative and to talk to our partners in different EU member states. And maybe in the end of this spring, maybe in May, we would like to have like white paper or non-paper presented to European institutions with clear ideas and maybe clear proposals. So I think it's a good start, and thank you so much for these quite important remarks you made.
Thank you very much. So before handing over to the final last words by Andrius Kubilius, I just want to thank everybody for their participation today. I think it was extremely interesting. Obviously, the urgent need for purchasing ammunition, 155 millimeter shells for Ukraine is clearly there. There's a proposal on the table. The key is now making sure that this can be done in a timely manner because they need the ammunition today, basically, and not next week. Then also, I think, secondly, this issue about the multiple NATO standards is quite an interesting one that's sort of come up and that needs to be addressed as well, of course. And several speakers also raised this issue about logistics and maintenance. And I think this is also key for the sustainability of our support as well. If we want to, make sure that our support to Ukraine lasts over time, this is an extremely important sector to support as well. In many ways, I mean, we're not only seeing a war of attrition, we're seeing a war of production here. And as I think, Nico, you put it very well, that we need to send the signal that we can outproduce Russia in this war if we want to make sure that we, Ukraine, Europe wins this war. And then also final point, I mean, I think the high-tech nature of this is extremely important, interesting, lots of innovation, and so much that the EU and EU member states can learn from the Ukrainians here as well. So this is not a one-way road. I mean, this is something where we both have plenty to benefit from each other, which makes sort of joint cooperation such an obvious arena to get into. And also to just paraphrase Katerina's words, we need to be bold, proactive, and be very strategic and forward-thinking in our support for Ukraine. With those words, I want to hand over to Andrius Kubilius for final parts.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Friedrich, for great job, managing the whole meeting. And also, of course, thanks a lot to all the speakers, all the participants. We shall continue that topic because, as I said at the very beginning, I'm not feeling myself very, very strong in military areas, but having some political, experience from Lithuanian politics to European Parliament politics, I still feel that, on the Western side, we're still using political instruments or management instruments which were created before the war. Peace facility, PESCO, whatever, all those, very complicated, names were created before the war. Some of them are used now during the war in quite an effective way, but I'm not so sure that this is enough. And, you know, and EU have shown that when the war came, really in some policy areas, we managed to change very rapidly. For example, energy policy. How we get rid of, you know, Russian dependency. That is remarkable. And it's, you know, Germany showed, you know, great, you know, well, I will not criticize what Germany was doing before with the dependency, but how you got rid of that, really, it's showing that when there is, you know, very strong understanding of the need, there is also a possibility to move forward. Or let's say even EU integration. I hope that it's also an example how things can move. I do not feel that on defense. I mean, EU is providing weapons, that's good. All those hesitations on Leopard, you know, it's definitely difficult to understand sometimes why so long hesitations, you know, and why decisions were not made, you know, before. I think that there is still a lack, at least as politician, again, I'm saying, still a lack of clear understanding on the Western side of some kind of geopolitical aim. What the West wants to achieve? And I see really, you know, what I'm afraid, you know, at least going out from this discussion, that in some Western capitals, there is, you know, worry that if Ukraine, with assistance of strong military assistance from the West, defeats Russia very quickly, then, you know, processes in Russia itself can go into very, you know, collapsing way, you know, I mean, you know, full chaos in Russia, and that can be, you know, very dangerous. Nuclear arms will be not controlled. And that is why some capitals maybe are deciding that, well, maybe it's not the best way to achieve such a, you know, total defeat. And that is why some countries, some member states are hesitating to deliver weapons. Outside of this, you know, I said, this is my comment outside a little bit of this, you know, discussion, but I see really very strong need for us to see both, you know, short-term questions. For example, how really to deliver 155, you know, out from our, you know, stocks, whatever. Second, I do not see still clear policy how we are going to increase our production, you know. There are some very good points, you know. Let's have better, you know, communication with military industry, but who should have? National governments, European institutions? I still do not feel that European institutions really are prepared for some kind of totally new, you know, challenge, new activities, and so on and so on. Or let's say cooperation with Ukrainian military industry. Who is taking care about that? And that is why I'm coming back to my, you know, fixed idea, I would say, but which I named, you know, very early at the beginning of the war. Where is Defense Commissioner of European Union? Who is doing that job? You know, Borrell, yes, he's doing a great job. But, you know, we can ask Kurmas, who was, you know, Foreign Affairs Minister, who is Foreign Affairs Minister, who was Defense Minister. I think there are some kind of, you know, how to say, different, you know, tasks. You cannot ask the guy who is responsible for foreign policy and diplomacy to be also Minister of Defense at the same time. Some kind of contradictions. If I understand that, you know, to create a new commissioner office, perhaps it's not so easy. But we have, for example, we have special envoys. Now special envoy was created for sanctions. What a great initiative. I hope that it can bring some kind of more, you know, Europeanized attitude toward sanctions. Why not to look into somebody who should take on EU level all those issues which we were discussing? Who should look how to increase military production, how to cooperate with Ukrainians, you know, how to do whatever, you know, very clear challenge, you know, of 155. Let's see what can be done, you know. But I'm again and again coming back to my more general conclusion. There are some issues which are really short-term and where we need to move very, very fast. But second, there are some long-term issues, you know, where we need to look more clearly into ourselves and to understand what we want to achieve. Is it only, you know, defense of Ukraine, or is it also possibility to look more broadly how all things can be, consolidated into some kind of clear strategy, longer-term strategy, which would include also strategy how we can assist Russian transformation to a more, democratic, more normal country. And here is the first beginning starts for this clear Ukrainian victory in the war, and even Ukrainian membership in NATO. But that's, again, I will not expand into that, topic. But that is why I'm always repeating that, there is a good example of how political will was, consolidated with Ramstein procedure. I'm saying, why not to have some kind of broader Ramstein for strategic, clear understanding of what we want to achieve, and then to consolidate our political will, and then to find a way really how to resolve in all those problems which we were discussing today. Perhaps we were not able to find all the solutions, but that is why perhaps we can promise that we shall continue our seminars, and also, like Urmas have said, maybe going into European Parliament, with some kind of special resolution on that. Thanks a lot.
Yes.